Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, painted from 1503 up to 1519. Fast forward 80 years after Masaccio revolutionized the world with the Holy Trinity. By 1500, linear perspective was no longer a tech breakthrough. It was standard practice. Artists had mastered the illusion of 3D space, but there was still a massive problem. The people inside these spaces didn't look alive. They looked like rigid, emotionless dolls. Now, to be fair, some masters had managed to capture human emotion before. Remember Giotto? And Masaccio himself painted incredibly expressive faces in his mid 1420s frescoes, like the tribute money. But even when these earlier artists managed to capture an emotion, the faces still fell. Static, dead. Art was missing a vital chemical ingredient. And that ingredient arrived with the invention of oil paint. The egg versus the oil. Before this, medieval and early Renaissance masters used tempera. If you're not familiar, tempera is basically raw egg yolk mixed with dry pigment and water. It dries in less than an hour and leaves a completely opaque, flat finish. For an artist, making a smooth, blended shadow with tempera is a nightmare. If you want to add a shadow, you have to apply a separate stroke of a darker tone, which often looks like a clumsy patch. The result? A flat, cardboard cutout effect. Enter oil paint, pigment mixed with linseed oil. While it was technically invented around the 11th or 12th century, it wasn't until the early 15th century that Flemish painters, spearheaded by the legendary Jan van Eyck, perfected the formula. Oil paint takes days to dry, but its real superpower is that you can dilute it until it becomes almost entirely translucent. This meant artists could apply a paper-thin layer of paint, let it dry, and then apply another, and another, and another. Light passes through these translucent layers, reflects off the bottom ones, and makes the canvas look like it's literally glowing from within. It added a profound depth of light. This is where the man who became the ultimate symbol of universal genius enters the frame, Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo wasn't just a painter. He was an anatomist who personally dissected corpses and sketched muscles to understand exactly how the human body moves. He was an engineer who designed helicopters, parachutes, scuba suits, and war machines. He was a musician, an architect, a botanist, a man obsessed with mastering every single branch of human knowledge. In fact, he was interested in so many things that he rarely finished his art projects. Today, fewer than 20 of his paintings survive. In 1503, a Florentine merchant named Francesco del Giocondo approached Leonardo with a routine request. He wanted a portrait of his wife, Lisa Gerardini. Leonardo took the job, used it to test a brand new painting technique, and then proceeded to never give the painting to the client. Leonardo worked on the Mona Lisa for 16 years. He dragged this canvas everywhere he went, to Milan, to Rome, and eventually to France, where he was invited by King Francis I. That's where Leonardo died in 1519, which is why the Mona Lisa ended up in the French Royal Collection and ultimately in the Louvre, rather than in Italy. So, what on earth was Leonardo doing with this painting for 16 years? He was experimenting with the chemical composition of his paints, applying up to 40 micro layers of glaze in certain areas. Each layer was thinner than a human hair. He would apply a layer, wait for it to dry, and then apply the next micro shade. But here's the magic part. Between layers, he used his finger or a tiny, ultra-soft brush to blend the edges so perfectly that you couldn't see where one shade ended and another began. No harsh lines, no sharp borders, just a soft, hazy transition. Leonardo had invented the ultimate gradient. He called this technique sfumato, which in Italian literally means smoky or vanished like smoke. Look closely. This is why the Mona Lisa seems to shift right before your eyes. Her famous smile is so elusive because the corners of her mouth were painted entirely in sfumato. Your brain literally cannot find the exact boundary of her smile. The soft transition between her face and the background gives her that haunting, mysterious aura. Before Leonardo, portraits were essentially high-end ID cards, rigid, proportional masks designed to freeze a person's likeness so they could hang on a wall. Portraits took months to paint, and nobody could sit there smiling for that long. Leonardo was the first to paint a living, breathing emotion. He didn't just capture a face, he captured a vibe, the internal psychological state of his subject. And that is what turned a standard portrait of a merchant's wife into the most famous painting on earth. But here's a plot twist you might not know. The Mona Lisa wasn't always this famous. Up until 1911, the general public didn't really care about her. But everything changed when she was boldly stolen right off the walls of the Louvre. The theft became a global media circus. The Mona Lisa dominated front page headlines worldwide, transforming her into a bigger celebrity than any pop star, actress, or socialite of the era. By the time she was recovered, she was an international icon. The Mona Lisa officially kicked off the High Renaissance. Giants like Raphael, Titian, and Correggio immediately adopted the sfumato technique. Because of Leonardo's breakthrough, the psychological portrait was born. A portrait was no longer just a document proving this is what this aristocrat looks like. It became an artistic statement about the human soul. Capturing emotion, mood, and psychological depth became the main playground for Western painters for the next 300 years.